November 2nd, 2018 was a day that began like any other, until terror struck at the heart of Tallahassee, Florida. The unsuspecting patrons of a popular hot yoga studio would become victims of the latest outbreak of incel-inspired violence, leaving an entire community reeling. Scott Paul Birla walked into the hot yoga studio at 5:15, seeking to join the 5:30 class. He seemed disappointed only 11 others were registered for the class. He asked when the more crowded classes took place and looked on the verge of leaving before deciding to stay. He walked into the class and stated that, "I have a question," put on ear protectors, and pulled a Glock out of his Planet Fitness bag. He then shot the woman nearest him. In total, he fired 13 rounds, 3 of which killed Maura Binkley, a 21-year-old student at Florida State University, and Dr. Nancy Van Vessem, 61, a doctor and faculty member at Florida State University, with the others wounding 4 others. After 13 rounds, his pistol jammed with a clicking sound. Joshua Quick, the only man at the yoga class, didn't know if it had jammed or simply exhausted its magazine, but he took his chance, grabbed the vacuum cleaner and swung it at SB's head. SB hit him with the jammed pistol and turned away. Undeterred, Joshua picked up a broom and struck SB again, receiving another blow for his trouble. These 2 attacks on SB gave others in the yoga studio time to flee, and, once Joshua recovered his wits from the blows he had taken, he followed. By the time SB had cleared the jam, everyone who could escape had. The wounded heard SB mutter something to himself and take one last shot, ending himself. Police arrived within 3.5 minutes, but it was all over by then. What drove SB the killer to target these unsuspecting yoga enthusiasts? In today's video, we'll delve deep into the twisted world of the incel culture, dissect the warning signs that went unnoticed, and examine what lessons can be learned to prevent this happening again. In examining SB's background, 5 main themes contributing to his increasing levels of violence can be seen. These were personality traits, mental health issues, incel ideology, a history of inappropriate behavior, and pre-attack planning. SB demonstrated several personality traits that contributed to his risk of violence. These traits include a deep sense of entitlement, social isolation, and a tendency to blame others for his problems. SB's mental health played a significant role in his progression towards violence. Throughout his life, he experienced episodes of mania, depression, and anxiety. He received court-mandated mental health treatments on multiple occasions, and at the time of the attack, he was found to have prescription anxiety medication in his system. A critical factor in SB's path to violence was his adherence to incel ideology. This belief system is characterized by a deep resentment towards women and a feeling of entitlement to sex and relationships. SB's fixation on this ideology fueled his hatred and anger, ultimately leading to the hot yoga studio attack. Several quotes from SB serve to illustrate his incel beliefs. "Just beneath their blushing lashes and their innocent smiles lies the most rancid and putrid sickening essences. The hot ones all detest me, and I haven't a clue why." SB had an extensive history of inappropriate behavior, particularly towards women. He was fired from multiple teaching jobs due to misconduct with female students, was arrested for groping women in public, and had been banned from local bars in his apartment complex for aggressive behavior. These incidents represent a pattern of escalating aggression and an inability to control his impulses. In the months leading up to the attack, SB engaged in extensive planning and preparation. He conducted online searches for the hot yoga studio, cheerleading camps, and yoga-related pornography. He also purchased a Glock pistol, practiced firing at a shooting range, and made numerous phone calls to the yoga studio. These actions demonstrate a clear intent to commit violence and a focus on targeting a specific group, women. If you look to the top right of the screen, you'll see a link to our video about the incel epidemic and its psychopathology, which you may want to watch after this video. In this section, we will delve deeper into SB's early life and young adulthood, examining the factors and experiences in his early life that may have contributed to his eventual violent actions. Family background and upbringing. SB was raised in a seemingly stable and supportive environment. Despite this, there were signs of trouble brewing beneath the surface. His parents reported having to sleep with their door locked out of fear of SB, and they removed him from a niece's birthday party for inappropriately touching young girls. These early warning signs showed that SB's aggressive and inappropriate behavior towards women began early in life. Education and peer relationships. SB excelled in both academics and sports throughout high school. He was a high school senior class vice president, an Eagle Scout, and received an athletic award for football. However, despite his achievements, SB struggled to form meaningful connections with his peers, particularly with women. This social isolation contributed to his growing resentment towards women and his belief that he was unfairly denied relationships and intimacy. In 1993, when he was in 8th grade, SB did something which caused all the students in his school to turn against him. He wouldn't go into detail about what this was, but after this incident, he hid under his sheets at home crying and described this day as the worst day in his life. That same year, he reported being bullied by a group of female students during home economics class. He self-reported this bullying as the origin of his misogyny. This doesn't make sense though, as by that age, he had already exhibited other worrying behaviors towards women. He repeatedly touched women inappropriately and without their consent, and prided himself in his asociality, stating that he would achieve more than social peers because of his focus on the academic side of life. Later, a classmate came forward and accused him of stalking her during high school. He wrote a 70,000-word novella titled Rejected Youth, which was a revenge fantasy about a schoolboy-turned-serial killer who hated the female classmates who had rejected him. In the novel, he denigrates and murders the female classmates before terminating himself as law enforcement arrives. Interestingly, while running in a student body election against a female opponent, his campaign slogan was, "Vote SB, because we don't need no woman." College and graduate school. SB continued his academic success in college and graduate school, earning a bachelor's degree and 2 master's degrees. However, his troubling behavior persisted during this time. He openly admired Adolf Hitler and the Aryan nations, and other members of his online social networks referred to him as a Nazi. He worked at an insurance call center but was fired for harassing a co-worker at a gym she frequented. His co-worker made a complaint to police, who met with SB and warned him not to make contact with her again. His co-worker chose not to press charges. SB attempted to press charges against her for reporting him, but was told he couldn't. He blamed this incident as being what really was the true onset of my psychosis. It sent me off the edge. He also related that he looked up the most extreme examples of stalking that ended in mass shootings and such, and I wouldn't advocate stalking, as it can be construed as complimentary for the victim. So, he saw nothing wrong with stalking and only opposed it as stalking someone implied they were attractive, and so was somehow a compliment. He also admitted stalking others on at least 3 previous occasions. SB wrote 2 songs about this experience. The first song was about a man fired from a job who took revenge by killing all of his co-workers. The second song was titled Stalker, and attempted to absolve him of any responsibility for his behavior. SB stated that aggression is a male trait and it is criminalized. Evasiveness is a female trait and it is not criminalized. But I think it could be. So, in his mind, if he behaved aggressively, he was simply behaving as a male and should get a pass on any behavior. This is obviously a ludicrous stance, but one can see how attractive it would be to a socially awkward man full of disappointment and rage, as it justifies him behaving however he wishes to get whatever he wants, irrespective of how others feel about it. Later, he stalked another woman who reported him to the dean, who instructed SB to leave her alone. In keeping with his skewed worldview, SB replied that he would leave her alone if she would leave him alone. Again, he cast blame on the women he victimized. While in college, he was banned from several bars for groping women and developed a very confrontational relationship with his roommates. He reported that these roommates reported him to the police, and feared for their lives because of his behavior. Family interactions. SB lived in Washington, D.C. at the time a series of sniper attacks took place there. SB's brother believed he might be the sniper and considered calling law enforcement to investigate SB. If your own family thinks you might be a serial killer, then clearly there's an issue there. SB's brother had to ask him to leave their house after SB entered his sister-in-law's bedroom and stood over her while he believed she was sleeping. Romantic and sexual experiences. SB's inability to form romantic or sexual relationships with women was a significant factor in his development of incel ideology. He experienced repeated rejection and felt a deep sense of humiliation and anger as a result. This frustration, combined with his sense of entitlement, appears to have fueled his belief in the incel narrative, which posits that men like him are unjustly denied access to sex and relationships due to societal factors and women's choices, and states that they are entitled to sex and a relationship, notably a relationship entirely on their own terms. Early encounters with mental health services. Throughout his young adulthood, SB began to display signs of mental health issues. His family, friends, and acquaintances expressed concern about his erratic and aggressive behavior, which led to court-ordered mental health treatment on at least 4 occasions. Despite these interventions, SB's mental health continued to deteriorate, eventually culminating in the violent attack at the hot yoga studio. In summary, SB's early life and young adulthood were marked by a combination of personal achievements and troubling behaviors. His social isolation, difficulty with relationships, and burgeoning mental health issues set the stage for his adoption of incel ideology and his eventual path towards violence. Recognizing these early warning signs and intervening appropriately can be crucial in preventing future acts of violence. If you look to the top right of this video, you'll see a link to an analysis of a study demonstrating the link between childhood experiences and adult forensic behavior, which you might find interesting after this video. Teaching, the military, and graduate school. Teaching career. During this time, SB was arrested for driving under the influence, investigated for destruction of property following an altercation with a roommate, yet passed a background check to become a teacher. SB held several positions as a public school teacher, which provided him with access to young, vulnerable individuals. However, his inappropriate behavior with female students led to multiple disciplinary issues. These incidents included suggesting that a female student should pose for Playboy and wear low-cut shirts, inappropriately touching students, and invading their personal space. He also misused school internet-connected devices to search for pornography involving cheerleaders and yoga. SB's pattern of predatory behavior towards his student reveals a consistent disregard for boundaries and a proclivity for exploiting positions of trust and authority. Military service. In 2008, SB joined the U.S. Army. He served as an officer in the U.S. Army, a role that requires discipline, leadership, and adherence to a strict code of conduct. During this time, 4 female personnel in the U.S. Air Force complained about his inappropriate behavior. As expected, SB not only made light of the allegations, but felt that his superiors should have believed him over the 4 female personnel. An evaluation in 2010 states that SB had a history of violating direct orders, poor judgment, and that he lied and lacked integrity. It was recommended that he not be promoted. Later, a formal investigation was initiated about his behavior towards female personnel. SB was found guilty of conduct unbecoming an officer and honorably discharged for unacceptable conduct. Graduate school experiences. During his time in graduate school, SB continued to exhibit concerning behaviors that demonstrated his hostility towards women. He was known to make inappropriate comments and engage in unwanted physical contact with female classmates and the female friends of roommates. In 2012, SB was arrested on 2 counts of misdemeanor battery after he grabbed 2 female university students' backsides in a dining hall. Criminal charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, but SB was banned from the dining hall. One of his roommates stated that, "We compared him to Ted Bundy back then. It was the way he lurked and followed girls." It appears that SB was fascinated with Ted Bundy, specifically and serial killers of women in general. In his song Wilder, about Christopher Bernard Wilder, known as the Beauty Queen Killer, SB wrote, "Incidentally enough, Wilder and Bundy both rubbed elbows in Tallahassee, spiritually anyway. Bundy with his sorority house mayhem, and Wilder with his abduction from the Governor's Square parking lot. I suppose I've rubbed elbows with both of them as well, living there for as long as I did, and retracing their steps, visiting their old haunts, etc. What a fraternity. I think he and Ted must be great friends in hell, and have in-depth and fascinating conversations. They have so much in common. I've got to get in on that when I arrive." Despite graduating from Florida State University in 2013, SB returned in June 2014 and was seen following a female volleyball coach around. Police issued him a trespass warning. Several weeks later, he returned to campus and was arrested for trespassing and banned from the FSU campus. As ever, SB blamed women on these issues and the consequences which followed from his own choices and behaviors. He penned another song inspired by this time in his life titled, "I Hate the Whole World." In it he wrote, "I add ammo and barrels of fuel to the warehouse every time such persecution happens. How long before it ignites, before the entire warehouse explodes and wipes out everything in a lengthy radius? It may only take a spark, a match, a small lighted match." It is clear he viewed himself as persecuted by dint of having consequences for his inappropriate behaviors. Online postings. SB recorded videos in 2013 referring to himself as carnifex, a term for public executioners in ancient Rome. He referred to these videos as his last will and testament and repeatedly blamed women for his problems. He stated that women bring this on yourselves, and that women who abuse their position would cause the next Columbine. He uploaded 17 of these racist, homophobic, misogynistic videos in 2014 and spoke about retribution and his duty, an obligation, a moral obligation to proceed and act as such. I thought that may help explain things a bit. Dating, social isolation, and online radicalization. SB continued sending his writings to a childhood friend throughout this time. As SB's writings became more deranged and violent, his friend found them too disturbing to read, but, crucially, didn't report them to law enforcement. In 2013, SB met a woman through a social media website. Their exchanges were initially pleasant, but SB sent her unwanted sexual text messages and suggested she become a stripper. Unsurprisingly, when he suggested they meet up, this lady declined. She called him crazy, weird and insulting, and cut off all contact. It should be noted that not only was this lady a yoga devotee, but had attended classes in Hot Yoga Tallahassee in 2013 and 2014. Unfortunately, this lady passed away prior to 2018. There is no evidence that SB was involved in her demise. As SB's behavior became more alarming, his social isolation increased, and he turned to online forums and social media for validation and camaraderie. It was during this time that he became more deeply entrenched in Incel ideology and found a community of like-minded individuals who shared his resentment towards women. This online radicalization likely served to amplify and justify his beliefs, further fueling his desire to commit acts of violence. Time in Florida. Unemployment and financial struggles. After losing his job as a teacher, SB moved to Florida, where he struggled to find steady employment. His financial situation became increasingly precarious, and he resorted to living with roommates to make ends meet, as he struggled to survive on VA disability fertilitas of approximately $1,500 per month. His average bank account balance was less than $300, and he frequently received money from his parents to make ends meet. At the time of the hot yoga shooting, he had $26.25 in his account. Later, he found work as a substitute teacher, and despite multiple performance issues and concerns raised by students, parents, and other teachers, he worked in over 20 schools in the state. Unsurprisingly, he again inappropriately touched a female student and was fired by the school in June 1st, 2018 for unprofessional conduct. Involvement with the local incel community. While in Florida, SB connected with the local incel community, both online and in person. He attended meetups and events where he met other individuals who shared his hatred for women and his sense of entitlement. This involvement with the incel community and immersing himself in that echo chamber reinforced his extremist beliefs and provided a sense of validation and support for his views. Escalating pattern of harassment and assaults. During his time in Florida, SB's pattern of harassment and assaults against women intensified. He faced multiple arrests related to groping women in public and trespassing on a university campus after being warned to stay away. Additionally, his apartment complex terminated his lease after he assaulted a woman at the swimming pool by slapping, grabbing, and shaking her backside after she refused his offer to apply sunscreen to her. He was arrested and charged with battery and ordered to attend court-mandated sex addiction therapy. He denigrated the value of the therapy, describing it as a racket. It should be noted that by SB's own admission, this was the fourth occasion on which he was ordered to attend mental health treatment due to his behavior towards women. Despite these incidents and legal consequences, SB's behavior continued to escalate. If you look to the top right, you will see a link to our playlist on psychopathy, which you might find interesting after this video. Planning the attack. Online research. SB began planning his attack in early summer 2018. He conducted several online searches for the Panama City cheerleading camp in June and July. He also searched for yoga-related pornography, the camp's schedule, and a map of the area around Hot Yoga Tallahassee. Remember that one woman who rejected him had been attending Hot Yoga Tallahassee at the time she rejected him. He accessed the class schedule for Hot Yoga Tallahassee multiple times in August and October. He was doing his research. Purchasing weapons and ammunition. On July 23, 2018, SB purchased the Glock pistol used in the attack from a pawn shop in Orange City, Florida. At the time, there was a mandatory background check and 3-day waiting period for purchasing firearms in Florida. It doesn't appear any waiver to the background check or waiting period was applied to SB. On October 27th, he purchased ammunition consistent with what he used in the attack. This is quite a critical aspect of the case. In spite of all his previous behaviors and run-ins with the police, SB passed the background check. Irrespective of your position on the right to bear arms, I think most people would agree that a person with a history of repeated stalking, inappropriate sexual conduct, and threatening posts shouldn't be able to pass a firearms background check. This was the last best chance to stop his planned attack. Practicing and scouting. In late July, SB practiced firing his pistol at an indoor shooting range in Tallahassee, about 280 miles from his home. Afterwards, he traveled 100 miles to Panama City Beach, where the cheerleading camp was located. This appears to have been a scouting trip, as the cheerleading camp was clearly one target he was considering. Communicating with others. SB shared a link to his website, which contained violent and misogynistic content, with a childhood friend in early August. The friend's wife reported SB to a federal law enforcement agency, but the tip was deemed non-actionable. He also called the owner of the recording studio he frequented multiple times in the days leading up to the attack, maintaining a semblance of normalcy. Final preparations. In the month of October, SB made final preparations for his attack. He made a hotel reservation near the yoga studio, cancelled his psychiatric appointment at the VA, worked on his last song, and pawned a handgun he had purchased in 2009. On November 2nd, the day of the shooting, SB uploaded his song, Fuck 'Em All, to a public music sharing website, expressing his frustrations with his life and his violent intentions. This timeline of SB's planning process demonstrates the premeditated nature of his attack, his commitment to carrying out the attack, and the extensive preparation that went into it. He scouted locations, got a more suitable gun, and practiced his shooting so as to be able to maximize the lethality of his attack. The problem with all of this is that it isn't illegal to drive to various locations, go to a firing range, or buy a pistol, and that it is extremely difficult to separate dangerous individuals from perfectly sane and safe individuals doing the same thing. If you look to the top right of the screen, you will see a link to our video on the Brian Kohberger case, which you might find interesting after this video. Victims. Maura Binkley was a 21-year-old student at FSU and a member of the Delta 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 sorority who had grown up in the Atlanta area. She was studying for a double major in English and German and had spent the previous summer studying at the University of Wuppertal in Germany. After her death, a scholarship was set up in her name, as well as a foundation to research the prevention of violent acts. Nancy van Vessem was a 61-year-old doctor, Chief Medical Director for Capital Health Plan, and a faculty member at Florida State, responsible for coordinating third and fourth year clerkship rotations in internal medicine for FSU students. Lessons learned. In the case of the hot yoga Tallahassee attacks, several key lessons can be identified to shape future risk assessments and prevention strategies. Pay attention to warning signs. Identifying observable concerning behaviors can help identify those at risk of becoming violent. Almost always there is a long history of inappropriate and threatening or even aggressive behavior, which has, most frequently, gone unpunished or with only slight consequences. Address misogynistic extremism. Recognizing the link between this mindset and violence is crucial for effective prevention. Society should weigh the benefits and disadvantages of monitoring online postings and incel forums more closely to identify those individuals who may be considering attacks. Enhance reporting and response systems. Strengthening these mechanisms can facilitate more effective prevention and intervention efforts. Embrace multidisciplinary approaches. Collaboration among professionals from different fields is vital to effectively address potential risks. Ideally, a multidisciplinary risk register could be completed that all relevant agencies, law enforcement, educational authorities, employers, etc. would have access to. Examine target selection and planning. Investigate possible targets in advance to prevent violent acts more effectively. By learning from this case study, professionals can collaborate to develop robust strategies for identifying and managing potential risks and reducing the likelihood of future tragedies. We hope you found this video interesting. Please consider hitting the like and subscribe button so that you'll be notified of future similar content. On the above right of the screen, we have a link to our second channel, a psychology channel, which you may also find interesting to check out. We have included references in the description, and we have also included links to books which you may find interesting. These are affiliate links, and so if you use them, we may receive funds which we'll put towards making more and better content. As always, take care of yourselves and stay safe.